Jeanne Tripplehorn, the woman who once emerged from one of Hollywood's most controversial films, has lived through both glory and obscurity. Once hailed as the cool intellect of Basic Instinct, she never chose the noisy path or exploited fame to climb higher. While the spotlight chased after the sensual icons of her era, Jeanne quietly withdrew, carrying a quiet conviction. True talent doesn't need to be displayed. It only needs to endure every moment of being forgotten. Yet behind those calm, intelligent eyes lies a lifetime of resilience against Hollywood's cruel standards, a place where women are judged by age and beauty more than by the depth of their souls. Jeanne once lost a major role due to family tragedy, endured years of obscurity through box office failures and media silence, and still, she never broke. She returned step by step, guided by intellect and discipline, from The Firm to Big Love, from Oblivion to an Emmy nomination, until she stood once again on the set of The Lowdown, proving that some stars don't need to shine. They only need to survive long enough for the light to find them. But to understand how Jeanne Tripplehorn managed to move through both glory and obscurity without ever losing herself, we have to return to where it all began. Tulsa, Oklahoma, a small town in the heart of America where there were no stage lights, only open fields, and the hum of a radio drifting through the night. Jeanne was born in 1963 into a seemingly ordinary family already touched by art. Her father, Tom Tripplehorn, was the guitarist for Gary Lewis and the Playboys, a gentleman who lived for music but was rarely home. When Jeanne was only 2 years old, her parents' marriage fell apart. Her father left with his guitar, leaving behind a little girl who would grow up with her mother and grandmother in a modest house in Tulsa. That separation quietly planted in Jeanne an early sense of loss. She didn't have a noisy childhood or the protection of fame. She grew up surrounded by silence and radio, where voices became her comfort. While her friends dreamed of big cities, Jeanne became captivated by late-night broadcasts, learning to observe, to listen, and eventually working at a local station, KMOD-FM. It was there that the young woman first discovered the power of sound, the art of making people believe what you say even when they can't see your face. From radio, Jeanne carried that warm, resonant voice to New York City, where she auditioned for Juilliard, one of the most demanding institutions for actors. From a small-town girl who had never left her state, she stepped into the world of professional theater, learning to control every breath, every glance. She didn't possess the kind of dazzling beauty that drew instant attention, but she had what Juilliard valued most: discipline and the ability to endure solitude. During those years, Jeanne lived in a cramped apartment, working odd jobs to pay tuition. Sometimes she would call home, listen to her mother's reassuring voice, and then fall silent for a long while. Out of those lonely nights, a personality was forged. Steady, quiet, and never dependent on anyone's approval. After graduation, Jeanne began performing off-Broadway, where there was no glamour, but there was freedom. And it was there that the seed of a true actor began to sprout. From the loneliness of a girl from Tulsa, transformed into the strength to become anyone life asked her to be. From the small stages of New York, Jeanne Tripplehorn stepped into a new chapter in the early 1990s, a period of testing but also the foundation of her rise. She began her screen career with The Perfect Tribute, 1991, a modest television project that nevertheless taught her to feel the camera, to control her inner world and her gaze, two things that would later become her quiet weapons in every performance. Then, in 1992, the great gates of Hollywood suddenly opened. She was cast as Dr. Beth Garner in Basic Instinct, one of the most controversial films of the decade. Amid the storm of debate surrounding Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas, Tripplehorn appeared calm, restrained, and complex. Her role wasn't loud or provocative, but it grounded the story. A rational woman in a world ruled by instinct. In just a few minutes of screen time, she left a lasting impression through a blend of intellect and vulnerability, logic and confusion. An image too real to be forgotten. Her cry, "She's evil! She's brilliant!" became one of the film's most iconic moments, not just for its intensity, but because it captured the voice of someone who had seen the truth of human nature. A line that would echo like a prophecy throughout her own career. Basic Instinct became a global phenomenon, grossing over $350 million worldwide and transforming Jeanne from an unknown stage actress into one of Hollywood's newest faces. But the success came with a heavy cost. She was branded as a seductive actress. Amid the erotic thriller craze that swept through the 1990s, Tripplehorn knew that if she didn't quickly redefine herself, she would be consumed by the very image that made her famous. In 1993, she chose The Firm, the adaptation of John Grisham's novel, as a way to reclaim her identity. As Abby McDear, the intelligent and steadfast wife of Tom Cruise's character, Jeanne revealed an entirely different side, gentle yet firm, rational yet compassionate. In the whirlwind of legal chases and moral corruption, her character became the film's emotional anchor, the balance between reason and humanity. Critics called her the quiet force in a storm, and The Firm went on to earn over $270 million at the box office. But for Jeanne, it wasn't just a role. It was proof that talent could outlast prejudice. She didn't need shock value to be remembered. She simply acted with precision, with eyes that could tell stories words never could. From that point, her true journey began. The path of a woman who would navigate both fame and obscurity to find herself again. After The Firm, Jeanne Tripplehorn became one of Hollywood's most sought-after names, not the kind splashed across magazine covers, but the kind of actress directors trusted with roles that demanded depth and endurance. She refused to rush into commercial films, choosing projects carefully, like a chess player waiting for the right move. In 1994, she appeared briefly in Reality Bites, the generational touchstone starring Winona Ryder and Ben Stiller. Though her role was small, her presence proved something essential. Tripplehorn didn't need the center, only quality. Whenever the camera found her, she commanded attention without fighting for it. But her greatest test came in 1995, when she took the lead in Waterworld, the post-apocalyptic epic with a record-breaking $170 million budget, the most expensive film of its time. Starring alongside Kevin Costner, she played Helen, the only woman daring enough to fight and survive on an endless ocean. The role demanded physical strength, willpower, and an emotional stamina few actresses of that era would have accepted. The underwater scenes lasted for hours, with Jeanne repeatedly diving as deep as 20 feet to film the now famous underwater kiss. Crew members remembered her as one of the hardest-working performers that year. The one who never complained, even when we were filming in a real storm. When Waterworld premiered, it underperformed domestically and was mocked by the press as the most expensive disaster of the decade. Yet over time, audiences began to see it differently. The film was ahead of its time, and Helen, through Tripplehorn's grounded performance, stood out as one of the rare women in 1990s cinema who didn't wait to be saved, but saved herself. There were no awards, no nominations, only bruises, exhaustion, and the quiet respect of everyone on set. Those became part of Jeanne's artistic legacy, proof of endurance, not glamour. With Waterworld, she learned that glory doesn't always come from success. but from the ability to stay standing through failure. And from that moment, Jeanne Tripplehorn understood exactly where she belonged in the film world. Not as a star to be worshipped, but as an actress who kept honesty alive in an industry built on illusion. After Waterworld, Jeanne Tripplehorn did not rest. She understood that to endure in Hollywood, it wasn't about chasing brighter lights, but about ensuring she was never forgotten. By the late 1990s, she appeared steadily in a string of commercial films. Till There Was You, 1997, Monument of, 1998, Sliding Doors, 1998, and Mickey Blue Eyes, 1999. It was a time when Hollywood's taste was shifting. Audiences wanted lightness and sparkle, while Jeanne carried a quiet, introspective depth. The very quality that made her unique, but also increasingly out of sync with the new trend. Till There Was You, a gentle romantic story, was expected to return Jeanne to the romantic genre. Yet upon release, critics dismissed it as too safe, too polished, and it quickly vanished from theaters. Monument Avers, by contrast, was dark and gritty, a Boston crime drama where Jeanne played a woman torn between loyalty and guilt. Her performance was praised, but the film underperformed commercially. That same year, Sliding Doors premiered and became a breakout hit for Gwyneth Paltrow, unintentionally pushing Jeanne into the shadow of a younger, trendier generation of actresses. In 1999, she returned in Mickey Blue Eyes, a romantic comedy opposite Hugh Grant. But even Grant's charm couldn't save the film from tepid box office results and criticism for its bland script. For Jeanne, it marked a difficult period. No scandals, no tabloid headlines, just a string of quiet disappointments. Each underperforming film felt like another crack in the confidence of a woman once hailed as the intellect of 1990s Hollywood. Instead of complaining, Jeanne chose to return to where she began, the stage and independent film. In Time Code 2000, she experimented with a continuous, uncut shooting style alongside Salma Hayek and Stellan Skarsgård, a daring project most A-list stars would have avoided. Then came Steel, this movie, 2000, in which she portrayed Anita Hoffman, wife of political activist Abby Hoffman, a role that demanded psychological depth and emotional restraint. These films didn't make headlines, but for Jeanne, they were oxygen, a way to preserve her artistic instinct and professional dignity at a time when many peers were losing themselves to fame. By the early 2000s, Jeanne Tripplehorn was still walking the thin line between triumph and trial. She was no longer a box office fixture, but remained respected for her bold choices and willingness to embrace unconventional roles. In 2002, she appeared in Swept Away, directed by Guy Ritchie and starring Madonna. Jeanne played Marina, a supporting role with quiet complexity amid what was meant to be a glamorous fusion of music and cinema. Yet when the film premiered, it was mercilessly panned, quickly becoming a symbol of early 2000s cinematic disaster. For Jeanne, it was a painful blow, not because of her performance, but because she realized that in this industry, even when you do everything right, luck can turn its back overnight. After that setback, Jeanne stepped away from the big screen, finding calm in television. In 2003, she appeared in Word of Honor, a TV drama about the haunting aftermath of war, and made a brief appearance on Frasier. Proof that despite fluctuating fame, she remained versatile. These smaller roles, for Tripplehorn, were not regressions, but pauses, a necessary breath before beginning a new chapter. That new chapter arrived in 2006, when Jeanne joined the HBO series Big Love, about a Mormon polygamist family. Over 53 episodes spanning 5 years, she portrayed Barbara "Barb" Henriksen, the first wife, the emotional backbone, and a symbol of the conflict between faith and personal freedom. Big Love not only resurrected Jeanne's career, but reminded critics of her depth. The role was widely seen as the defining performance of her life. She earned 2 consecutive Satellite Award nominations, 2006, 2007, and a Win Award nomination 2010. Proof that when Hollywood closed its doors, television opened its arms. During Big Love's prime, Jeanne continued to showcase her range in Grey Gardens, 2009, playing Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, a role that required exquisite subtlety to balance power and loneliness. Her performance earned her an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actress, a milestone that affirmed Jeanne Tripplehorn wasn't merely back. She was back at her best. From 2010 to 2011, she explored new genres. The comedy Crazy on the Outside with Tim Allen and the indie film Mourning, directed by her husband, Leland Orser. The couple crafted a gentle, poetic work about grief, a reflection of the emotional journey they themselves had lived through in Hollywood. That same year, she appeared in Five, a Lifetime anthology about women facing cancer, playing Pearl, a role that earned her another Win Award nomination for Best Actress. This was the period when Tripplehorn proved something rare. A career doesn't need noise to grow. After 2 decades of setbacks, pressure, and prejudice, she had found her voice, that of an actress no longer afraid of the spotlight, seeking only roles that made her heart truly move. When Big Love ended, Jeanne didn't stop. She knew Hollywood's memory was short. Disappear for a few years, and you become someone who used to be. So in 2012, she quietly returned in a guest role on the sitcom New Girl. A bold, small but memorable part that reminded audiences Jeanne was still here, still graceful, still sharp. That same year, she lent her voice to Electric City, a digital animated series produced by Tom Hanks. A rare foray into digital storytelling for her. But the real turning point came when Tripplehorn joined the main cast of Criminal Minds, one of CBS's most successful crime dramas. Starting in season 8, she played Dr. Alex Blake, a forensic linguist replacing Emily Prentice, Paget Brewster. Among a long-established ensemble beloved by fans, Jeanne entered with calm authority, never forcing attention, letting her intelligence speak for itself. The role reaffirmed a forgotten truth. Intellect has its own kind of magnetism. Over 2 seasons, 2012, 2014, Alex Blake became a model of mature femininity, conflicted, resilient, yet deeply compassionate amid the coldness of crime. When season 9 ended with the 2-part finale Angels Demons, Jeanne left Criminal Minds quietly. No drama, no scandal, no headlines. It was her own decision, a graceful exit at the right time. After nearly 3 years of playing such an emotionally taxing role, she needed silence, the same kind of pause that had sustained her for 3 decades. 3 years later, in 2017, Jeanne returned in Little Pink House, an independent film about one woman's battle against corporate power. As Charlotte Wells, she projected a composed intensity, reaffirming her gift for portraying morally complex women, the kind of characters audiences had loved her for since The Firm. Between 2018 and 2019, she continued to test her range. In Todd Haynes' Gloria Bell, a tender story of a middle-aged woman rediscovering herself, Jeanne played a small but memorable role, described by critics as serenely powerful. She also appeared in the family-centered series We Only Know So Much, and lent her voice to 2 acclaimed animated projects, Undone and BoJack Horseman. These years reflected an uncommon balance between art and life, between visibility and peace. Then came 2020, and Mrs. America, FX on Hulu, where Jeanne portrayed Eleanor Schlafly, sister-in-law to conservative activist Phyllis Schlafly. Set amid the turbulent politics of the 1970s, Jeanne brought to life a woman caught between personal belief and political allegiance, shaping one of the show's most nuanced figures. The series was hailed as one of the most powerful feminist works of the decade, and Jeanne's understated performance helped define its moral complexity. In 2022, she entered two entirely different worlds, a dual testament to her versatility. On HBO's The Gilded Age, Jeanne became Sylvia Chamberlain, a wealthy socialite ostracized by New York's elite for her scandalous past. Beneath the chandeliers and strict etiquette, she portrayed a quiet melancholy, the pain of a woman who once had everything but was no longer allowed to belong. That same year, on Prime Video's The Terminal List, she embodied U.S. Secretary of Defense Lorraine Hartley, a woman of immense power torn between morality and politics. Two opposing roles, two distinct worlds, yet both reflecting the same truth about Jeanne Tripplehorn: her ability to belong anywhere, from corridors of power to the margins of exile. Once labeled the woman of the 1990s, Jeanne has now become a symbol of maturity, intelligence, and timeless grace, proof that some lights never go out. They simply shine deeper. When Jeanne Tripplehorn was still in the early stages of her career, between endless auditions and long nights in New York, she met Ben Stiller, a young actor and director who was also struggling to find his place in Hollywood. They met on the set of a television comedy show in the early 1990s, where both shared the same awkward yet burning energy of newcomers stepping into the artistic world with empty hands and big dreams. Amid that chaos of creativity and uncertainty, they quickly discovered a connection. Both were intelligent, sensitive, and deeply in love, with a profession that could lift you to the sky and drop you back to the ground within a single day. Their love blossomed quietly. No fanfare, no headlines. They went to small premieres together, wrote sketches, and during those years, they were like two climbers ascending the same mountain, sharing every hope and every doubt. When Ben began to gain recognition with Reality Bites and The Ben Stiller Show, Jeanne was entering her own breakout with Basic Instinct. Their paths seemed separate yet strangely parallel, both catching Hollywood's eye, both learning how to live beneath its blinding light. They became engaged in the mid-1990s, blessed by friends and colleagues. But like many Hollywood romances, that light burned too brightly to last. As their careers took off in different directions, love gradually became a quiet test of endurance. Jeanne, who valued stillness and discipline, felt out of place in Ben's fast-paced comedic world. Ben, with his restless creative energy, struggled with the quiet depth and introspective nature of a woman as self-contained as Jeanne. The cracks began in small ways: conflicting filming schedules, months apart, and the inevitable clash between two opposites, one craving stability, the other living off motion. Eventually, before they could make it to the altar, they parted ways. Quietly, without drama or scandal. No harsh words, no bitterness, just two artists choosing to let go before they hurt each other more. Afterward, Jeanne rarely spoke about the relationship, but to those who knew them, that love left a gentle mark, a chapter of youth she seldom revisited but likely never forgot. Because sometimes, first loves aren't meant to last. They exist to teach us that even when two people no longer walk together, they can still cherish the one who once made them believe in love. After her relationship with Ben Stiller ended, Jeanne didn't rush into another romance. She spent the following years focused on her craft, channeling her emotions into psychologically demanding roles, as if using her characters to heal herself. It wasn't until the late 1990s, when life had quieted down, that Jeanne met Leland Orser, an actor with sharp features and kind eyes, known for supporting roles in C7 and ER. They met at a script reading for a small television project, and no one expected that these two private, introspective souls would find each other in such an unassuming moment. Their love didn't flare up dramatically. It grew slowly, like a steady flame kept alive by understanding. Both had lived through disappointment and knew that real love wasn't about grand promises, but quiet perseverance. After a few years together, they married in 2000, in a private ceremony without press or spectacle, only close friends and family. Not long after, they welcomed their son, Leland Orser, and Jeanne almost completely withdrew from the public eye to focus on motherhood. The early years of marriage weren't easy. Jeanne was still fighting to keep her footing after several career setbacks, while Leland balanced work between film and television to support their family. Often, they had to work in separate cities, and each distance became another test. But unlike many Hollywood couples who cracked under pressure, Jeanne and Leland faced it with honesty. They knew that silence could kill love just as quickly as noise, so they learned to communicate through long emails, rare weekends together, and small, ordinary moments that held their world together. What sustained them wasn't fiery passion, but companionship. Leland understood Jeanne's quiet nature and dislike of chaos, while Jeanne valued that her husband never competed for the spotlight. When Leland directed Mourning, 2010, an independent film about loss and healing, he invited Jeanne to star. Together, they wrote, filmed, and lived the story as a reflection of their own marriage, sometimes weary, sometimes painful, but always grounded in trust. In a rare interview, Jeanne once said that motherhood had changed her profoundly. She no longer chased fame or validation, but sought to create things that truly mattered. Leland witnessed that transformation, from an actress once afraid of being forgotten into a woman who found peace simply being at home. After more than 2 decades together, Jeanne and Leland have kept their lives quiet and private, rarely attending red carpet events, occasionally appearing side by side at independent film screenings. They are not the kind of Hollywood couple that craves attention, but rather a rare example that in a world full of broken stories, there are still loves that choose silence. And it is that very silence that keeps them together after all these years. After more than 3 decades of constant work in film and television, Jeanne Tripplehorn has quietly built a solid financial foundation, despite never being a box office star or a high-profile brand ambassador. According to reputable sources such as Celebrity Net Worth, her current estimated net worth is around $8 million, with an average income of about $100,000 per television episode during her time on major series like Criminal Minds and Big Love. Most of Jeanne's wealth comes not from short-lived bursts of fame, but from consistent, long-term work. Throughout the 2000s, she steadily appeared in a range of projects, acting, voice work, and television, while also collaborating with independent filmmakers. Her 5-year run with HBO's Big Love not only boosted her recognition, but also provided financial stability. Later, her contract with CBS for Criminal Minds placed her among television's A-list actresses, with top-tier pay and the rare privilege of creative choice, a position few women of her generation achieved. Interestingly, several reports suggest that Jeanne's net worth is often calculated jointly with her husband, actor, and director Leland Orser. Together, they maintain a modest investment portfolio in real estate and independent film ventures, including properties in Los Angeles and small-scale production projects like Mourning. They don't own lavish mansions or personal brands like many peers, yet Jeanne is regarded as one of Hollywood's most financially sustainable actresses. No debts, no dependency on endorsements, earning purely from her craft. Her discretion about money mirrors her personality, practical, grounded, and untempted by superficial glamour. For Jeanne Tripplehorn, success has never been a number in the bank. It's the ability to survive in an ever-changing world while staying true to who she is. Now, in 2025, Jeanne Tripplehorn continues to move forward. After more than 30 years of endurance and artistry, she proves that maturity does not mean stopping. In a Hollywood overflowing with new faces and fleeting trends, Jeanne makes a striking return with FX's new series, The Lowdown, a project regarded as a creative rebirth in the later stage of her career. In The Lowdown, Jeanne plays Betty Jo, a widow living in Tulsa, her real-life hometown, grappling with the mysterious death of her husband. The series delves into themes of guilt, faith, and buried secrets, blending neo-noir aesthetics with psychological and social undercurrents. This is not only a demanding role, but also a symbolic homecoming. After decades in Los Angeles, Jeanne finally returns to tell a story rooted in her own beginnings. Premiering in September 2025 on FX and Hulu, the show marks her collaboration with acclaimed director Sterling Harjo, known for Reservation Dogs. On her personal Instagram, Jeanne shared behind-the-scenes photos and official posters, revealing that she not only stars in the series, but also actively participates in its promotion, her first major public appearance in years. At the New York premiere, she appeared elegant and serene, her presence quietly commanding. For fans, it was deeply moving. The woman who once weathered the Basic Instinct controversy, who was written off from Hollywood's A-list, had returned to the spotlight on her own terms, slow, thoughtful, and self-assured. With The Lowdown, Jeanne Tripplehorn closes a 30-year journey with a role seemingly made for her, that of a woman who has endured loss, been misunderstood, yet chooses to live authentically and keep moving forward. And thus, at age 62, she has not only returned to the screen, she has returned to herself, in a Hollywood that is finally learning to value stars who shine through depth, not noise. After more than 3 decades of walking through Hollywood's seasons of light and shadow, Jeanne Tripplehorn leaves behind a legacy that is quiet, unpretentious, yet deeply enduring, much like the woman herself. From a Tulsa girl stepping out onto small theater stages, Jeanne became one of the rare figures from the 1990s who managed to survive every rise and fall of the industry. She never needed blockbuster leads, scandals, or trophies. Instead, she built her reputation on substance and depth, qualities that modern Hollywood too often forgets. Jeanne's legacy lies in her ability to portray real women, imperfect, unsaved, yet always able to rise again after each fall. From Dr. Beth Garner in Basic Instinct to Barb Henriksen in Big Love, from Jacqueline Kennedy in Grey Gardens to Sylvia Chamberlain in The Gilded Age, each role feels like a reflection of Jeanne herself, intelligent, sensitive, and quietly unyielding. She paved the way for later generations of actresses to embrace silence, to choose roles guided by emotion rather than fame, and to prove that age is never a limitation when a woman still has something worth saying.